or stretches, and step by step gradually train my body. So I can train my mind step by step gradually. And awaken my Tathagata essence, my Buddha nature, or the pure nature of the mind. And develop all enlightened qualities, such as the perfection of generosity, perfection of ethics, perfection of patience, perfection of joyous perseverance, the perfection of concentration, and the perfection of wisdom, knowing the nature of all things. I'll do this to be of most benefit to everyone I encounter in this life. And eventually to benefit all living beings without exception. We practice the meditation to develop realizations. So visualize that the ground is flat and smooth, a sort of heavenly experience. White roses in the nature of white light arise from the ground. They have hundreds of petals, a beautiful perfume, and radiate white light. Meditate on this. It removes all suffering, disease, and so forth. White roses transform into yellow roses in the nature of yellow light. They have hundreds of petals, a beautiful perfume, and radiate yellow light. Meditate on this. This results in increasing happiness, increasing enjoyment, and all realizations of the path to enlightenment. The yellow roses transform into red roses in the nature of red light. They have hundreds of petals, beautiful perfume, and radiate red light. Meditate on this experience. Your energy develops, the energy of compassion, the energy of love, energy of bodhicitta, energy of faith, energy of perseverance, and energy of concentration. The red roses transform into blue roses in the nature of blue light. They have hundreds of petals, beautiful perfume, and emanate blue light. Meditate on this experience. This results in removing all hindrances, suffering, disease, problems, bad conditions, short life, and so forth. We can finish the meditation. So, I'm going to try and cover both Refuge, the sections in this book on Refuge and Karma. It's two separate chapters. So it'll be a bit of a summary, really. So starting off with Refuge, it's a Buddhist term, sort of a term I, don't really use at all in my speech until encountering Buddhism. And it sort of suggests we need some sort of protection. It also, in Buddhism, it sort of means beneficial direction as well as protection. It's like positive, beneficial direction, a refuge. So we might not feel we need protection if our life's been very easy. If we've been lucky enough not to encounter much suffering, or I don't know, when we if we were in our early 20s, life might just be so exciting, full of promise, and no worries. I don't know, many people experience that, but so you might not feel you actually need refuge. Life's like a picnic at the beach. And all this sort of heavy-duty religious stuff is a bit excessive. So, might feel that or someone who's felt they're a very successful person and in control of things and everything they've sought, they've achieved. So, you might feel like your biggest worry is what they call first world problems. That, you're concerned because you've got an iPhone 12, but the 13's come out. So that's sort of, stressing you a bit. Or when you go down to the cafe for your chai latte and your smashed avo, the chai latte tickles your nose a bit, and the smashed avo is a bit too smashed. First world problems. Or even you didn't get, how you get those warnings before you watch anything these days? Like you get a warning, this may be distressing. And and you may need ongoing psychological counselling if you watch this thing. And then you watch it and there's just a couple of grainy blurs. But it seems like there's warnings to absolute everything now. So my Buddhist perspective is we've got to guard our mind, protect our mind, not try and change the external environment to such a point where it never ever upsets us. So anyway, that's probably a bit irrelevant. But in actuality, according to the Buddha, everyone needs refuge. Everyone needs protection. Everyone in psychic existence, every human being, every animal, every people in spirit realms and so on. And the reason is because we're what's called dependent arisings. We're not independent. We're not an island. Our life and our experience is an incredibly complex mix of different factors coming together, like factors within our own mind, factors of your genetics and your brain and your body and so on, factors of the environment, influences of different people, and things like karma from previous lifetimes. So that sort of makes us have the experiences we have. This huge aggregation of things. So one of the reasons we need refuge is because nothing lasts. As we looked at the section on impermanence, that nothing lasts. Our relationships don't last. Our body doesn't last. A happy feeling doesn't last. It comes and goes. And the economy goes up and down. The environment goes up and down. Different powers in the world rise and fall and so on. Even universes expand and then the Big Bang and then the Big Crunch. I think that's one of the theories these days. It's because nothing lasts. And so our present good conditions unfortunately don't guarantee the future. And we can ask anyone in Ukraine at the moment that. And it's true, they had a peaceful country and now they're a war-torn country. All present good conditions that Shane Warne had when he was going to holiday in Bali, then it didn't determine the future. Who knows where Shane Warne is now and what he's experiencing? We like to believe we know when we go to a funeral, and we all like to say, this person's in heaven who's just died, and so on. But there's no guarantee of that. And personally, I think it's more realistic if you can see the huge variety of ways our minds project a vast spectrum of reality. Everyone's different. Everyone's mind's different. Way they experience the world is different. There's a huge range. And the same way after death. It's the same way before you fall asleep and dream, your mind might project anything. And the same way after death. That's sort of more in line with the Buddhist presentation. It all comes down to the mind. So yeah, there's no guarantee that good conditions will last. And though we don't wish for the change, sometimes through the force of conditions, that's a phrase Geshe used very often when bad situations arise. He said, through the force of conditions, this has happened. Therefore, I must accept it because it's a reality. But I can accept it without blaming myself, and I don't have to go into denial. I can just recognize through this aggregation of conditions, this is the current situation. So yeah, through the force of conditions, good situations can change. And even, like I mentioned in the impermanence section, the brightest people, the healthiest people, the fittest people, the people who most seem in control of everything, they've got it all figured out. They get old, they get sick, and they die. So that's one reason we require refuge, is because of impermanence and the force of conditions. We need some sort of refuge. Another reason we need refuge is because nothing is satisfactory. So we never, most of us, if we're honest, we're never at a state of peace, contentment on an ongoing basis. We always feel, I need to do something to fix my life. Whatever that might be, whether it's travel or fix a health problem, or get someone who's problematic out of my life, or whatever it is, we always feel that. So through dissatisfaction, that I can't be happy until the situation is other than it is, and spend our whole lives pursuing this other situation. So that's another reason why in Samsara we need a refuge, is because the unsatisfactoriness of Samsara experience. So cyclic existence is defined as the 5 aggregates. So humans can be broken up. You can just say mind and body. We've got a mind and body. Or you can break it up a bit further. In the mind part, you can say we have form, feeling, compositional factors, consciousness, and discrimination. But basically, we've got mind and body. And the definition of samsara, this suffering experience, is a mind and body that's conditioned or bound by or arisen from delusion and karma. So because of our previous delusions, a misunderstanding of how we exist, of grasping at this I, this ego, getting upset, getting angry, demanding this, demanding that, all those actions and all those thoughts, and conditioning our future experience. So if the mind and body is bound by delusion and karma, we will definitely experience suffering, according to the Buddha. So it's a sort of paradox that in Buddhism you have to accept that life has a suffering aspect. You have to accept that, because then you can actually relax. You're not under pressure. You know, when you go on holiday and you think, I've got to see this side, got to see this side, got to cram in the happiness and so on. And then it's impossible on holiday to have 2 weeks of non-stop happiness and joy, because your mind is bound by delusion and karma. So there's discomforts, there's aches and pains, there's sometimes you're a bit bored and someone's annoying you a bit. That's sort of normal experience. Someone in the tent next door is making a lot of noise, you can't sleep, Yeah, it's said to be good to accept there's this suffering experience, but on the other hand, to seek a remedy for it. It's called renunciation in Buddhism. We seek renunciation. We seek to be free of suffering and its causes. So, in the Middle Ages, I think I mentioned, there was a saying, Rosa sans spina, there's no rose without thorns. Just as there's no rose without thorns, there's no life without suffering experiences. So even the best situations, like living in Australia, which is really one of the best countries in the world to live in, if you look in terms of just natural resources and beautiful environment, clean air generally, and so on. A free society, wealthy society. And but even within Australia, we've got so many problems. Everyone in their lives has these experiences this truth of suffering. So, as I mentioned, the cause of suffering is the root cause, according to the Buddha. The absolute root cause is misunderstanding reality, and it's called grasping at inherent existence, or exaggerating how things exist, making them more concrete, making them more substantial, and particularly with regards to I, who I am. So when we when we're in a very emotional situation, if we're standing by a riverbank and a friend pretends to push us, there's this really strong feeling of I almost fell. And the I is, the Buddha said that the way the I is represented in that thought or feeling I isn't actually how it exists. So it appears to be a very tangible, substantial entity, when in actual fact it exists just as a label I on this mind and body, which is continuously changing. So we tend to think I'm fixed, I'm Tim, I'm the same person I was when I was 5 years old. But my body's completely changed, my mind's completely changed. But there's this sort of sense of permanence of this I. And sometimes the I seems to be behind those. This is my body, this is my mind, and the I that owns it is sort of this thing behind. So the Buddha said we don't actually exist in that way. And that when the I appears like that, it drives us to create negative karma. Delusions arise. I must have this. I'm upset. I'm jealous. I'm so great. I'm angry. You hurt me. And the me is this mistaken concept. So it drives all our delusions and destroys happiness. And it causes us to create negative karma and all the suffering in the world coming from this basic misunderstanding, this root delusion. So samsara being like that, just our mind and body conditioned by delusion, it means we can't walk away from it. We can't just get away from all our problems by, you dream of, I'll head off to a different life and I'll be free of my problems. But you take your mind with you, and you take your body with you, and you take your mental habits with you. So, so there's no location that's free, in this world. If there's a country that was free of suffering, it would be a very popular holiday destination. But there isn't. So that's the truth of suffering, and that's why we need a refuge from that suffering and from those causes of suffering. So the refuge taught by the Buddha is the three jewels. They're called the three jewels of refuge. The Holy Buddha, the Holy Dharma, and the Holy Sangha. And they're regarded as being non-deceptive or completely reliable. So it said nothing in samsara is completely reliable. Even your best mate isn't completely reliable, because if conditions change, you might be separated from them. At the time of death, you'll definitely be separated from them. And maybe they'll change. Their mind may change, your mind may change, you might have disagreements, things might drift apart. You see in war zones, neighbours killing each other. They used to get on, but one's a Bosnian Muslim and one's a Serb. Before you know it, they're killing each other, because through the force of conditions, things have changed. So it said nothing in samsara can guarantee is completely reliable. Like a delicious almond croissant. If you get very sick, it's no longer delicious. You can't stand the thought of it. Beautiful music. If you've got a migraine, it's not reliable. It's not a reliable source of happiness. So that's what's said about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is that they are completely reliable. The more you allow them to pervade your mind, the more benefit you'll get, the more peace, and the more you'll move towards enlightenment. So I said the Buddha is the principal object of refuge in Buddhism. So the Buddha is the principal object of refuge because 2,500 years ago, he taught the Dharma. So the Dharma comes from Shakyamuni Buddha, who was born as Prince Siddhartha, and then lived up his royal life and headed off and meditated, trying to find a pathway out of suffering. So one of the reasons the Buddha is said to be non-deceptive is he's free of fear. So free of all the fears of samsara. If you get to the point where you realize emptiness, you realize the nature of reality, then you're no longer bound by the fears of samsara. You no longer experience suffering. So if we're looking for a refuge, if we're looking for protection, then if you're stuck in a swamp, there's no benefit clinging onto the other person in the swamp, and you both go down together. The person has to be free from the swamp to be of much use. So that's the analogy that's used with someone who's gone beyond a normal ego-based ignorance, gone beyond samsara, then they're free, they've transcended this ordinary situation of suffering. And if you ever meet a really holy being, such as many of us are experienced with Geshe Loden, then you really do get this sense of transcendence. Or many people say that about the Dalai Lama, that they're just not ordinary. They're not habituated experiencing suffering. They're not driven by ego, no matter what happens. They have a tremendous sort of warmth and presence. And so there's this sense they're free of the swamp that I'm in. That was my sense with Geshe. Up to 30 years. He was never boring. Just sitting with Geshe was never boring. And it was you sort of had this, you really felt there was a refuge there. It's a strange thing. It's like a very deep level, it's a very reassuring presence if you ever meet a holy being. It's an extraordinary thing. So yeah, that's one of the reasons the Buddha is said to be non-deceptive refuge, and particularly that he taught the Dharma, which is the means of liberation. But the Buddha is not regarded as just a historic figure. It's regarded, all enlightened beings are regarded as they can manifest in your life here and now if you have this, if in your heart you open up to that, then you can have these enlightened influences in our own lives. So and one thing said about enlightened beings is that their sole purpose is benefiting others. So in the way we try to develop our compassion, develop our love, step by step, little by little. And an enlightened being has reached a point of this mind of bodhicitta, the wish to benefit all living beings because of their suffering. And the Buddha has realized that, and they said they can spontaneously, effortlessly benefit others. It's a natural sort of manifestation of that pure good heart. So Yeah. So we can question, is this enlightenment just a fairy tale? You know, most of us in our lives have never met anyone. All we normally meet is generally ordinary people who are driven by their egos. You know, people who, if we get criticized, we get upset. If we get praised, we get elated. You know, if we lose something, if something's taken from us, we're stressed. We do lots of worry. You know, ordinary reactions. So most of us only ever experience that. So we can question, is this enlightenment just a fantasy, that when we say that the Buddha is enlightened? And in actuality, there's many, many limitless enlightened beings from Buddhist perspective. And that we all have that potential. It's the underlying nature of mind, is that potential. So we can ask, well, how can enlightenment be possible? And we can see that we can, in our own life, we can remove any negativity. Say, I always get angry. Any negativity can be reduced step by step by step. I can develop patience. If I've got poor concentration in meditation, concentration can step by step be developed. You know, if I can develop my compassion to one more person, another person, extend out. So within yourselves, there's no inherent limit. There's no cut-off point beyond which you can't extend any enlightened quality. With your wisdom, understanding the nature of reality, or understanding who you are, there's actually no limit to being able to understand. And particularly if you take in the perspective of future lives, so we're not just limited in this life, we can step by step. So from that perspective, then enlightenment's possible. There's nothing within us. We say, oh, I'm stupid, I can't meditate, I'm always upset, I'm always worried. But there is actually, that's just a thought. There's nothing within us that can that have that limit. And cause always leads to result. If you get some eggs and milk and heat it up, you'll get the result of an omelette. Cause and result always occur. So said the thing with the Dharma, if we apply it to our minds, it's always reliable. If you practice compassion with the methods, you'll develop your compassion. If you practice patience, you develop your patience. If you practice concentration, your concentration will step by step improve. It's just cause and effect, it's not magic. So, and then the other reason we can look at the enlightenment as being a possibility is when we start to examine what consciousness actually is, and we see we have this natural underlying purity underneath all my thoughts, all my feelings, all my worries, all my bad actions. Underneath all of that is this clarity and awareness, consciousness. It's it's who we are at the deeper level. And that clarity and awareness is not tainted in any way by what we've done. It still has pure clarity. It knows things. It can know anything. That's the nature of who we are. That's the nature of our mind. So for that reason, enlightenment is it's almost like a birthright. Enlightenment is just actually an expression or a revealing of who we are. Once we get rid of all our worries and all our sort of neurotic thoughts and things, then underneath all of that is enlightenment. And the Dalai Lama often says the nature of the mind is compassion. You know, anger, harming others, is just a distortion. It's like a cloud obscuring the sky. But the underlying nature is this marvelous clarity and compassion. So for that reason, enlightenment, some of the reasons you can think about anyway, that maybe this enlightenment isn't just a fantasy. But like I say, it's a huge benefit if you meet someone who you think it really has developed some enlightened qualities, like the Dalai Lama. Then in terms of giving oneself some faith that that's possible, because all the Dalai Lama, all Geshe do all their lives is try to lead people to realize this nature, as their whole lives are dedicated to that. So you think, well, why would they do that? You know, why would the Buddha spend all this time teaching? Why would great teachers, you know, like Lord Jesus Christ, why would they do that if we don't have these enlightened potential? So it said the Dharma is the actual refuge. The Buddha is the principal object of refuge because it taught the Dharma. But the Dharma is the actual refuge because that's what we bring to our mind, and it changes our mind. So there's a quote that the Buddha said, the Buddhists can't wash away suffering with water. They can't wash away our suffering. You know, they can't wash away our delusions. They can't take our suffering with their hand. They can't just say, oh yeah, you get very distressed, all your worries are gone, all your anger's gone, all your jealousy, all your depression, all your loneliness, I'll just take it away. They can't do that. They can't transfer their realizations to us. But what they can do is show the Dharma, which is the methods that or the concepts we apply to our own minds. And that's what actually transforms our mind. So again, it's cause and effect. It's not magic. So if, for example, in here it says we should practice ethics. If we practice ethics, the mind becomes more stable. It becomes less agitated, becomes less stressed. Ethics is said to be a cause of peacefulness and happiness and future human rebirths, just through not harming others with our body, speech and mind. Or if we practice patience, the methods to develop patience, that's a refuge from anger and the violent situations anger will put us in. And the conflict, it's just cause and effect. If we practice concentration, like focusing on the breath, and step by step trying to develop stability and clarity, then that's a refuge from our agitation. Again, it's just training the mind, step by step by step. You know, if we practice the teachings on love or compassion, kindness, pure good heart, then it's a refuge from all the selfish and sort of uptight, selfish stuff that we sometimes experience. So, and bodhicitta, if we develop bodhicitta, this tremendous purpose to move towards enlightenment, then that's a refuge from a sense of meaninglessness. Like everything becomes meaningful. Doesn't matter if you're going through a hard time, you use that as a part of the path to enlightenment. If you're a good time, you use that as part of the path to enlightenment. So, and then things like meditating on impermanence or on emptiness, they're a refuge from all delusions. They reduce all delusions and suffering states. So, I'll quote page 56. Refuge. What am I trying to quote here? Dharma is said to be of two types. Here it says the Dharma is said to be of two types, the external Dharma and the internal Dharma. The external Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha, as in the books that we read or the discourses that we hear from our Guru. The internal Dharma is our inner realization of these teachings. This inner realization is the complete integration of the principles and teachings of Dharma to the very depths of our mind, both conscious and subconscious levels of mind. This is achieved through the practices of listening, thinking, and meditating on the Dharma. It is the inner Dharma, the actual realization of the teachings, which is the true refuge from all forms of suffering. So, the third jewel of refuge is said to be the Sangha, which is the spiritual community. So, the actual Sangha is anyone who's realized emptiness. So those beings who have cut through, they've realized the nature of reality, and they're no longer bound by our normal ego-based sort of reactions. But more ordinarily, the Sangha refers to ordained monks and nuns, and also just our spiritual community, so our friends in our community who support our practice. So there's quite a strong emphasis in the Buddhist teachings that you shouldn't be careful who you rely on or get influenced by in your life. You know, like if all your mates want to take you drinking and that's all they ever want to do, then it's regarded as not a useful influence. It's better to have a spiritual community that's going to help you nurture your own potential. So those are the three jewels of refuge, and they're likened to a doctor, a nurse, and the medicine. So the Buddha's likened to a skillful doctor who can sort of diagnose any disease and then prescribe a medicine. The thing that actually gets you better is the medicine. So when you're sick, you have to take your medicine. And the same with, if we've got the sickness of samsara, and delusion and negative karma, then we need to apply the Dharma to our minds. And the Sangha is said to be like the nurse who helps you take your medicine. So, And the benefits of refuge are said to be limitless. Like the benefits of refuge is it will take you decide this thing is infallible, completely dependable. These teachings on love, compassion, concentration, patience, whatever the teachings on karma, teachings on impermanence, they're completely dependable, and they'll lead you all the way through to a more peaceful life, a happier life, all the way to enlightenment. So all the results to enlightenment depend on refuge, this sort of inner turning towards this resource. Other sort of, on a more personal level, you get a sense that you're never alone with refuge. You're not sort of battling the world with your own sort of struggling to comprehend, struggling to know what's the best path and so on. You've got this tremendous resource within you, which is your refuge, which is a fantastic thing to feel. And a sort of sense that you're inviting something truly extraordinary into your life. That's the sense of refuge. So, the condensed Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it said, the Buddha said, if the merit from taking refuge had form, the three realms would be too small to accommodate it. The great ocean, the source of all water, cannot be measured with a cup. So I just wanted to see how I'm going for time, but did I not bring my phone? Oh well. 2:31. 2:31. Oh, I'm way over, as usual. I'm way over. So I very quickly mentioned karma because so the way it's said we practice refuge is by observing karma, and karma in is Sanskrit word. It means action, and it refers to our actions of body, speech, and mind. So our thoughts and our words, and our physical actions. And it's said through our karma, and we establish our future states. So, yeah. So, maybe I was going to read on page 65. I'll just quote from the book. It puts it in a nutshell. Strictly, the term karma means action. Its general usage, however, covers actions, the imprints made on the mind from actions motivated by delusion, and the results of those actions. The imprint is what links an action to its eventual result at some time in the future. The law of karma is therefore the law of cause and effect, and refers to the inevitable production of a certain future result by any action. An understanding of karma is the key to creating whatever future result you may wish to experience. So, yeah, the one of the main ideas with karma is that when we do something, it's not finished there. So even just the thought, but as well as speech, as well as doing something like maybe feeding the bird a piece of bread, that action's not finished there. It's made an imprint on the mind. That generosity and care for the bird has made an imprint on the mind that will then ripen in the future. And is the Buddha said this is the cause of karma, is the cause of what particular rebirth we take, what sort of experiences we have, what sort of tendencies we have, and what sort of environment we're in. So it's a very big subject, karma. And yeah, it's trying to get a sense that we can control our future. Most of us don't really feel that, you know. We feel a bit like blown like leaves in the wind, you know. When things are good, it feels like we're in control. When things get bad or we get old, we start feeling fragile, and it becomes clearer we've got less and less control. So the teachings on karma are saying we can actually establish the future we wish for, rather than a suffering future. And through one of the difficult things with karma is it's quite faith-based, because these karmic seeds or imprints on the mind aren't visible. So if I have a car crash, I don't know why that karmic seed for that experience ripened. But there is a sense there was a cause within my continuum for these conditions to aggregate and for me to experience that. So same way, like you know, in the desert, it doesn't look, you can't see any seeds there. And then when there's a big rain, suddenly the desert's full of flowers. There was all these seeds there, and we don't know what seed is the cause of what. So it's a little bit faith-based, but at the same time, I think it's a bit intuitive that you sort of get a sense that like produces like. Like if you're violent and harmful, then it's not conditioning your future in a good way. You know, if you're kind, then it feels like it's nurturing something wholesome, and it will establish a good future. So I think that you can sort of get an intuitive sense with karma. So there's said to be four principles of karma. The first one is certainty of karma, that a like produces like. So if you plant an apple, you'll get an apple tree. If you plant rice, you'll get rice. If you plant wheat, you'll get wheat. And it's said to be similar with karma. If you practice patience, and that's said to be a cause of like a peaceful environment. A beautiful form actually is said to be arise from patience. If you practice generosity, it's said to be a cause of abundance in future lives. So there's this sense like that mind of abundance. When I feel I can give, I don't have to cling on. Then it's said to be a cause of abundance in future life, and so on. So yeah, that's the certainty of karma. The second principle is that karma expands. So in the same way, if you plant a chestnut, you might get a chestnut tree and get hundreds of chestnuts for the next sort of 200 years. Or if you plant an idea in your own mind, you know, maybe when you're young, you get the sense, I'm no good. And then that idea expands and fills your whole life with the thought, I'm no good. Or someone plants a seed, you can do anything. And that expands. Or even on the internet, how something expands. You know, someone comes up with the idea of planking or taking selfies near a precipice. So then suddenly, year after year, there's people falling off bridges and cliffs trying to take a selfie in a dangerous situation because the idea is sort of expanded out there. So that's the second idea. Second law or rule of karma or law of karma. The third one is that if there's no cause, there's no result. So if you want, I guess you say again and again, if you want happiness, you have to create the causes of happiness. It's not just good enough to say, I want happiness, I want happiness, I want happiness. I don't want suffering, I don't want suffering. I guess you would say you must remove the causes of suffering, the causes within one's own mind. So if there's no cause, there's no result. Yeah, and the fourth one is that imprints are not lost. So these impressions on the mind last for a long, long time. So, and the results of karma, it says that when we die, at the time of death is the most important time in your life. Because a karmic seed will ripen. One particular seed will ripen and throw your next rebirth. And what seed ripens, like we've got endless karmic seeds, depends on the state of our mind. So if we're peaceful, if we're compassionate, then naturally a good seed will ripen and project a good next rebirth. If we die angry, it's not a good way to die. If we die being violent, it's not a good way to die, because a negative karma will ripen and cause a suffering rebirth. So a good thing with karma, with these seeds, is that it's all purifiable. Anything with the mind can be purified. So there's different methods to purifying karma. There's one called the Four Opponent Powers. But more generally, any dharma will purify karma. So taking refuge, is said to be refuge. Through refuge, you gain complete purity. Or through practicing bodhicitta. One of the benefits of bodhicitta is masses of negativities are instantly purified just with one moment of this mind of enlightenment. So, yeah. So that was a very brief covering of karma. So I might just finish with a meditation on Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. So that's the founding Buddha. So it's a visualization, it's a refuge visualization. One thing with visualizing the Buddha there's sort of three ways you can look on it. So for Buddhists, like myself, we see the Buddha, we visualize as a historic figure, the source of the Dharma, but also someone you can actually petition here and now, an enlightened being, to bless your mind. And that's an incredibly sort of powerful image. But for people who aren't Buddhist, you can visualize the Buddha as being like just an expression of a nice image that's an expression of your own enlightened potential. So it's your mind that's creating this image, and you're basically just trying to ripen your own potential for concentration. Like the image is trying to represent sort of perfect concentration, compassion, control over samsara, and so on. So you can look on it as I'm just trying to establish in my mind's eye a sort of what would my enlightened potential look like if it was in form, in physical form. So so it's like a perfect, peaceful, compassionate image. And so, there's an aspect of seeing it as our own potential, and or we can just see it as someone who's, if we're not Buddhist, we can just see the image as someone who's in the zone, who's a sort of physical expression of being in the zone, or in a good space in every way you can imagine. So that's one way of seeing it, if you don't like the sort of religiosity of enlightenment and so on. But anyway, generally we regard the Buddha, he's the founder of the tradition, enlightened being, and can bless us in the here and now. So we'll do the meditation. So sitting in meditation posture and focusing just on your breath. So always coming back to the breath to stabilize the mind. Just a sensation of your breath. And visualize, all of this visualization is light-natured, made of light. So visualize in front of you, about the level of your forehead, a precious golden throne. That represents the enlightened mind, which is the source of all Buddha's physical manifestations, enlightened mind. On top, visualize a beautiful light-natured lotus flower. That represents renunciation, because just as a perfect pure lotus can appear from a muddy swamp, so this mind of renunciation, of suffering, turning away from suffering, arises from the swamp of suffering in life. On top of the lotus, visualize a flat moon disk, a full moon, composed of light, very peaceful, very beautiful. it represents the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. Because just as the full moon is very soothing on a hot night, so the mind of enlightenment is very soothing and removes all delusion. On top, visualize a sun disk, a flat, light-natured, radiant sun that represents wisdom. Because just as the sun eliminates all darkness, so the light of wisdom eliminates all ignorance, the darkness of ignorance. And on top of this throne, lotus, moon and sun, arises light-natured Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, golden-coloured, in the form of the paintings or statues of the Buddha. Radiating golden light in all directions. Buddha's right hand rests on his right knee in the earth-touching gesture, showing the power to control all negativities, and particularly lower rebirth. His left hand rests in his lap, in the gesture of concentration. It's holding a begging bowl full of wisdom nectar. The nectar that dispels all delusion, and especially all disease. He wears the 3 saffron robes of a fully ordained monk, showing his ethics is completely pure. Completely pure. Sitting in full lotus posture, symbolizing perfect concentration. And smiling gently towards you. The Buddha's crown is a white Om syllable, OM, symbolizing the enlightened body. At his throat, red R, AHR, symbolizing enlightened speech. And at his heart, a blue horn, HUM, symbolizing the enlightened mind. And around the horn, the Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra rosary, Om Muni Muni, Maha Muni Eso. So you can visualize from the Buddha's heart, from the hum and mantra rosary, white light emanates in all directions and makes offerings to all holy beings in the universe. Beautiful offerings, for example, light and sounds, beautiful food, and so on. Beautiful landscapes, offering to all holy beings in existence. They return in the form of Guru Shakyamuni Buddhas and dissolve into the Buddha in front of you. This is called the wisdom beings dissolve into the commitment being. And we get a sense it's no longer just my visualization, but in actuality, the Buddha appearing in front to bless us. Visualize ourselves surrounded by all living beings in the form of humans and make requests to the Buddha. That you are our Guru, you are the Buddha jewel, you are the Dharma jewel, you are the Sangha jewel. You are our great protector. Please release us from all the sufferings of samsara, of sickness and aging, unhappiness, all our delusions, like anger and depression, and loneliness, and so on. Please release us from all this suffering. And lead us to enlightenment. And from Buddha's heart, from the hum and mantra rosary, beautiful, radiant white light and nectar emanates and dissolves into all of us through the crown of the head. This white light and nectar washes out all negativities, all obscurations, hindrances, diseases, all suffering is washed out through the lower parts of our body, through the pores of the skin, through the lower orifices, in the form of black light, dark impurities, if we like, blood and pus. All negativity is washed out by this beautiful healing white light and disappears into the earth, disappearing forever. we like, we can recite Shakyamuni's mantra while holding this visualization, purification. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. 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 And to finish the meditation, you visualize the Buddha and comes to the crown of your head and dissolves into you. You'll feel the Buddha's enlightened body and my body have become one. The Buddha's enlightened speech and my speech have become one. And the Buddha's enlightened mind and my mind have become one. And meditate on it. And finally, we can dedicate the merit or positive energy of this meditation on refuge towards achieving peace and happiness and full enlightenment, and thus leading all living beings to that state. Finish the meditation. Okay, so any questions?
Tim, can you give us your thoughts on the distinction between mindfulness and enlightenment?
Yeah, like mindfulness is one of the tools you use in particularly in developing concentration, but more generally it's sort of used these days as a term for just observing the mind, whereas enlightenment's the complete and fullest development of the mind. So like in developing concentration, I said the two main tools are mindfulness and awareness. And mindfulness's job is to remember what I'm supposed to be meditating on and holding the mind on that. And awareness is like the part of your mind that's a spy that says, oh yeah, I've got distracted. I'm supposed to be on the breath, but I'm thinking about arm and cross-arms, you know. That's the job of awareness. So it's those two things, mindfulness and awareness, allow us to develop in any of the meditations. So yeah. So it's an essential part of the mind that we need to develop. Yeah.
You know, I was a question about purifying karma.
Yeah.
Negative karma.
Yeah.
I've read and practiced that. You have to remember all the negative karma you have done since you were born.
Right.
And you have to acknowledge that.
Right.
And then you have to promise yourself
Yeah.
and others that you will accept opposite.
Yeah.
And that will purify negative karma.
Yeah.
Will it mean that your negative karma will never darken?
If it's fully purified, yeah. But it's so. There's some teachings that when you purify negative karma, if it's not fully purified, it might ripen, but in much less harm. So it might be just a headache instead of a lower rebirth or something like that. Or often the guru, some of these holy gurus would put their disciples through the mill, and that's purifying this huge amount of negative karma by making, like Milarepa's a famous one. He had to build these 7-story towers as part of his guru yoga, but it was to purify his mind. So just going through various hardships can be a very quick way if you're relying on a holy guru. But one of the main methods in Path to Enlightenment is said to be the 4 opponent powers for purifying negative karma. And the 4 opponent powers is, first one's power of the object. And the object is the refuge and bodhicitta, because refuge, all our negative karmas are created either in relation to other living beings, harming others, or in relation to holy objects. So the power of the object is refuge, which is the holy object, and bodhicitta, which is all living beings. So that's the first opponent power. Then the second one is power of regret. So we have to regret the actions we've done. And it's said, you don't actually have, it's useful if you can remember them, but we can't remember all the actions from previous lifetimes. So the example given is if you wanted to burn down a forest, you don't have to know every tree in a forest. So if you've got a big pile of rubbish, say a tip, you don't need to know all the rubbish in that tip. You just decide, I'm going to get rid of it. In the same way, if we regret all my negative karma from this life and previous lives that I've done with my body, speech and mind, then that's the power of regret. I regret it because it's harmful. And the third one is power of opponent force, so doing something positive. So can you meditate on bodhicitta, feeding the birds, doing something good. And the fourth one is power of commitment. So you determine, I won't do that again, or I won't do that again this morning if I can't handle big commitment, but making some sort of commitment, I won't. So yeah, those four opponent powers, you can completely purify all negative karma, and it's highly recommended that we try and do our best to do that, because it's only the cause of suffering. So yeah, some people do longer retreats, like 3 months or 3-year purification retreats. Okay. No online questions, Johnny? Is anyone online? No. Okay. All right, so cup of tea time. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending.
I'm here.
Oh, actually, I'm supposed to mention there's an Easter retreat as well. Sorry.
I'm used to him ignoring me.
Yeah.
Brother.
Sorry.
Brother.
There's a retreat over Easter, so that's on developing peacefulness and good heart. So retreats are good because you can, your mind can really start to settle down and focus on the meditations rather than individual sessions. But I think it's on the website. Easter's next weekend, isn't it?
Oh, since you brought it up, Medicine Buddha
When's next week? When's
in 2
Easter?
weeks, but Medicine Buddha is next Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
They might be
okay.
interested.
Oh, so we've got 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, of course, because we've got the garden open
But that's on
weekend.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks, 2 weekend time, we've got a retreat anyway here, and it's going to be live-in and online. So if anyone wants to attend, you're welcome.
Who's the teacher, Tim?
Unfortunately, I am, so I've got to go and do some preparation. Yeah. So anyway,
He's very funny. You get a lot of jokes from.
I've heard them all already, unfortunately. Anyway, if anyone would like a cup of tea and there's tea and...
Also, I'm here, so I'll have the shop open until about 4. Anyone interested?
Oh, okay.
Enjoyment?
Okay.
Enjoyment there? Enjoyment here?
Thanks, Danina.
After this enjoyment?
All right, marvellous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't have to wear a nice thing there, but as a staff, I have to. Like, Daniel, a loving man, is up. So, there's no shop. Scared. Yeah, the shop's in there. You can go through these doors. We can go through that. Yeah, you're welcome.